This is another one of those heartbreak hotel joints for the ladies. Why won't you grow up and be a man someday? I can't believe that you're still playing silly games. Now why do I put up with all this child's play? Now if your word is all you have, then you ain't worth a damn thing.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks jam-packed show today for you. We got a lot of great guests. We got a lot of action going on. So let's get to it. First off, updates on healthcare. It appears to be finally over. Remember, there was a last-minute glitch where the Republicans raised two objections to the Senate bill that were, or to the House bill that went to the Senate that held up the proceedings. It had to go back to the House. Don't worry, it went back to the House, passed the Senate. It's over. OVAH. Okay, they've gone through the last set of machinations, and we do have the health care reform bill. So rest assured, all of our health care problems are solved. Whew. I continue to have a debate every single day with everyone I know as to whether that's true or untrue. And you know, look, so many people are on the opposite side. I'm beginning to question myself. Like, and I'm beginning to think, like, am I the one that took the crazy pill? And maybe I am. You know, here's how the scenario unfolds. Here's what I'm sure of and not sure of. Final thing on it, because we've talked about it too long already for the whole week. Okay. What I'm sure of is when Obama says to a crowd chanting, "Yes, we can, yes, we can," he says, "Yes, we did," right? That, along with 800 other statements I read, they will not be coming back to health care anytime soon, okay? Now, there's reports out today that, you know, Grayson and Harkin and all these people, oh, no, we're going to do the next round right away. And if they do, I'd love them. If they're going to fight on that, great. They're going to have no support from the White House. None, none, none. So then the other thing I'm sure of is, will they come back to health care at some point in our lives? It would be, you would imagine, disastrous if they didn't. So the question is, how long is it going to take to come back to health care to fix the underlying problem? And Grayson says that he talked to the Democratic leadership, and they say, look, your Medicare buy-in and all that stuff, that sounds lovely. Let's come back to it in 3 years. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty important piece of evidence, right? 3 years. So I was right that they're not coming back to it anytime soon, right? So now, whether the situation gets so dire with premiums, and there's a little mini revolt, or the elections don't go this way or that way, there's 100 different variables. Maybe they come back to it earlier than 3 years, and then, you know, people will look back and go, oh, see, Cenk, it's a good thing we did the first part, and then the second part naturally followed. In which case, I'll turn around and say, hey, you know what? That is roughly how it was supposed to work. Good for you, okay? And so I'll say I was largely wrong at that point. That's the part I'm not sure about. Or it could be that they wait, and in that 3 years, there is a little mini revolt, and in that, people are so angry about the premiums, they think it's the reform plan that did it. They get angry at the Democrats lose election, healthcare reform becomes harder to do, not easier to do. Meanwhile, the corporations have gotten even more powerful and richer and use those resources to buy even more politicians, thanks to the Supreme Court decision that allows them to spend as much money as they want in the campaigns, and healthcare reform doesn't become easier to do, it becomes harder to do, in which case I come back and go, ha, what did I tell you? But we're all screwed, so what's the point? So, now, but I think that at some point it's going to get so dire, you're going to get past all of that. And people are going to say, I can't afford these premiums. I know you want me to, I know you got a mandate now, but I just can't pay them. I don't have the money to pay them. And so I think that's when it gets really resolved, and not when the Democrats come back to it out of the goodness of their heart. So we'll see how it plays out. All right. So now, that's the bill and the substance of it, and that's done, right? Now, what's not done is the general violence and you know, vitriol and anger brewing into physical acts all across the country. Now, over the last couple of days, we've been telling you about a lot of those people throwing bricks through windows, conservative bloggers encouraging them to do that. A guy went on the Alan Combs show and talked about, hey, look, I'm just trying to help Pelosi because it's better that we break her window than assassinate her, which he then says there's going to be 1,000 little Wacos and that might be next. So, I mean, this is getting 100% out of hand. Then Cantor came out and said, what are you talking about? I was the victim of violence. Did you know I'm Jewish? There's a minority card, okay? So he threw it out there and, oh, I'm a victim and stuff. And I said yesterday on the show, my ass. Nobody shot at your damn office. That doesn't make any kind of sense. And it was a shot at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it went up in the air, apparently, according to police reports, and came back down through the window. So they weren't shooting at the window. Today, the Richmond police concluded that the shot was, quote, randomly fired. Not directed at the office, certainly not directed at the congressman. There was no one inside the building, and probably no one even knew that Eric Cantor had some office within that building. Okay, so as we suspected, of course, Cantor is just trumping that up like, what? I'm getting shot at too. What? Why are these Democrats crying? What? We get shot at all the time. Yeah, you're going to save that story for a couple of days, right? And remember one little extra thing in there? He said, oh, I've got all sorts of threatening emails, but I won't share them with you. Gee, I wonder why. Really? You got any emails that said, I'm going to shoot out your windows? I'll bet you $1 million you don't. Liar. Okay. It's just like Lou Dobbs. Oh, I'm a victim. Oh, man, they're coming to get me. You think the right wing is problem. Oh, the left wing are lunatics. They're the ones that always do terrorism. Really? When? Oh, I do Weather Underground back in 1873. Yeah, all right, go back 40 years. And go back even further, etc. Oh, well, the guys who were really, violence, the goddamn founding fathers, they were all libs, picked up their guns and muskets and started a revolution. Well, I guess that would be accurate. It was a long time ago. Of course it's the right wing doing the violence, and we have more of that today. So, but meanwhile, look at Gingrich. Gingrich comes out today, just like Eric Cantor did yesterday, and blames the violence on the Democrats. Now, this audio is not great, but I want to share it with you. I think you're going to understand most of it. And he starts, before this audio begins, he said in his statement, there's no place for viciousness against Democrats. But, let's hear the rest of it now.
Oh, look, I think there's something very disingenuous about the Democratic leaders who attacked the Tea Party movement, who refused to hold town hall meetings, who refused to go back home, who kept the Congress locked up in Washington, and are now shocked that people are angry. I think the Democratic leadership has to take some real responsibility for having behaved with such arrogance and in such a hostile way that the American people are deeply upset. And so I think, let's be honest about this. This is a game that they're playing. People should not engage in personal threats. I'm happy to condemn any effort to engage in personal threats. But I think that the Democratic leadership has to take some real responsibility for having run a machine that used corrupt tactics, that bought votes, that bullied people, and as a result has enraged much of the American people. And I think it would be nice for President Obama, Speaker Pelosi, and Majority Leader Reid to take some responsibility for what their actions have done to this country.
I hope you heard all that, but let me, if you didn't, give you a couple of quick highlights there. He said they're just playing a game. Yeah, until one of them gets really hurt, and then it's not going to be a game anymore, Newt. And he says they have to take more responsibility, not the people who are throwing the brakes, not the people who are cutting the gas lines, not the people who are sending the fake anthrax. No, the Democrats have to take responsibility because it's their fault. He says that they use corrupt tactics, bought votes, bullied people, and so they have some real responsibility here. I mean, it's a classic Republican thing. Blame the victim. So if my supporters shot at you or threw a brick through your window, it was your fault. You had it coming. If you hadn't bullied us and you had just listened to everything we told you to do, well, then we wouldn't have had to threaten you like this with our, enraged protesters and activists, etc. Of course, earlier, Newt Gingrich had said about terrorist attacks. Well, the left, of course, always blames America for terrorist attacks as if it was our fault for getting attacked. Now, when the attacks are against Democrats, what does Newt Gingrich do? He blames them for getting attacked. And also with Virginia Tech, he had said that it was the liberal elite's fault that that guy went on a shooting spree. So they take the violence, which they say, oh, I'm happy to condemn, but the Democrats totally had it coming, and it's their fault. Funny enough, the guys who did the violence are all right-wing. You forgot that part.
Yeah, it's always a direct a contradiction for what they say. I mean, a store gets robbed, a convenience store gets robbed. They'll say, you know what? I condemn those little thieves that ran off with the chips and the gum and stole everything and put the gun in the guy's face and took his money. But you know, it never would have happened if he hadn't put the merchandise on the shelves like that. What's wrong with him?
Imagine Republicans saying that. You know, I condemn the robber that came into the guy's house. But on the other hand, the guy's house was nice. It was a pretty house, probably had jewelry in it. So who had the moral responsibility not to have such a nice house and such nice jewelry for their wives? Think about it. You're not often going to hear that from Republicans. But when it's attacks against Democrats, well, that's their moral responsibility. Okay, now if you think that's bad, wait till you get a load of a message that was left on Representative Harry Mitchell's office. So let's listen to that, clip number 7.
This is the call that she made to the congressman's office.
Hi, Mr. Mitchell. For the rest of your life, with the vote that you cast, you are going to have to look over your shoulder for as long as you live in this district. You are always going to have to look over your shoulder because people in your district hate your face. I love my insurance company. And to have you come in between me and my doctor, I cannot tell you how much I wish a panty bomber would come in and just blow your place up.
All right, 3 parts of that I loved. The panty bomber? You could. That's the one you went with? Okay, interesting. I hate your effing face. That was my second favorite. How come nobody ever hates the other body parts? I hate your effing chest. No, face, okay, that's fun. And then, but actually my favorite. I love my insurance company. All right, have at it, Hoss. I mean, but think about that, man. Republican propaganda works so well that this woman is convinced she loves her insurance company. Now, did she ever, I don't know, did she ever get sick? We don't know her situation. Well, she sounds like she's already sick. But did she ever get sick and have the opportunity to find out if her insurance company is even going to cover her or not? Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. So you love your insurance company now, wait and see what happens, right? And the bill passed. What happened? Has the government come in and be like, step aside, we're not going to let you see your doctor anymore? My guess is, if you went to see your doctor, whoever left that message, shockingly enough, you're going to be able to see him. And guess what? You're going to have that same exact insurance company that you love so much. What changed? Unbelievable, man. The violence and the suggested violence from these people is out of control, and it has nothing to do with health insurance. It has to do with this rage of, we are not in control anymore. Damn it, I miss power. And this is how they're venting it. Aided, abetted, and encouraged by their leadership. All right, now that's against the Democrats in office, but it's not just stopping there. In Nashville, we've got a story of right-wingers who are getting violent with Democratic voters, not even congressmen. We don't even know if this guy even voted, but he had an Obama-Biden sticker on his car, and a guy runs into him. All right, so we got a local story on that. Let's watch that first. Clip number 9.
Only on News 2 tonight, a case of political road rage in Nashville, all over a President Obama bumper sticker. Good evening, everyone. This is the vehicle that was involved in the incident. A man and his 10-year-old daughter were driving on Blair Boulevard today on the way home from school. That's when he says Harry Weisiger flipped him off and rammed into his vehicle. Mark Duran walks us through what happened in his own words.
I have an Obama-Biden bumper sticker on my car. He pointed at the back of my car, my bumper, and then he flipped me off, gave me the one-finger salute, and he laid on his horn, and I moved forward to the stop sign. My turn to go through. He was on the horn the whole time I was waiting to move. I went through the intersection and was going up Blair to come home, and I looked in the rearview mirror again, and this same SUV was speeding, flying up behind me. Then he bumped me, and I put the brake on, and then I guess he had kept going fast, and he smashed into me, and I put the car in park to, deal with the accident, and he started pushing the car with his SUV, and he pushed my car up towards the sidewalk, almost onto the sidewalk, and fled.
Weisinger is charged with felony reckless endangerment. Bob?
Man, this is crazy. The guy's got his 10-year-old daughter in the car. And this lunatic is like, oh, Obama, Biden, oh, they took what came between me and my insurance company that I love so much. Oh, my God, they're not going to be able to raise my premiums like they used to. Well, actually, they are, so don't worry. Okay, oh, I'm going to ram into his car. No, don't worry. These guys aren't going to commit any violence at all. No, this right-wing stuff, it's totally under control. Glenn Beck, Fox News Channel, Republican leadership, they wouldn't be encouraging any violence at all. Except as Newt Gingrich and Eric Cantor and John Boehner have all said, the Democrats kind of have it coming. Their congressmen, their elected officials, and people who put Obama-Biden stickers on their cars. If they voted for this, isn't it their moral responsibility, in the words of Newt Gingrich, to get rammed in the back of their car by another crazy Republican? Dangerous stuff, man. Dangerous stuff. Because you combine that with that Alabama blogger that we heard yesterday on the program talking about how there's a civil war coming. And you combine that with the secessionist movement in Texas that the Republican governor is encouraging. And there's all this talk brewing again. Because for the right wing, when they lose in politics, they seek power by other means. That's part and parcel of what they are. It's in their DNA. So that's why you have to be careful. And then when you have a natural reaction, hey, let's be cautious about that. You say, you see that? The government's investigating me. I got to grab more guns. I got to ram into more cars. Okay, now you say, well, is it really fair? I mean, you heard the Newt Gingrich thing. You heard the Cantor. You heard all these talk shows seemingly excusing it, encouraging it, all this, the threats, the violence, the rage, etc. But in case you're still not convinced, I got one more for you. So Sarah Palin had a comment the other day that we shared with you. She said after the health care bill passed, she put out on our Facebook account, it's time to reload. Reload. Okay, now, there's a million other words you could have used. That's the word you went with. All right, but by itself, we didn't make a big deal out of it, right? Just mentioned it in passing. Well, now you look at her website, Sarah Pack, and you begin to get a sense of what she meant by reload. So let's take a look at that picture. She's got these 20 Democrats that she thinks they should, quote, target. And no, you're not seeing that wrong. Those are gun sites. So she's got 20 Democrats within her gun sites. And in case that wasn't clear enough, she says, we'll aim for these races and many others, and this is just the first salvo in a fight to elect people across the nation who will bring common sense to Washington. Please go to sarahpack.com and join me in the fight. So 2 different times fight, aiming for these races. The aim that they have is the gun site, and she just told you to reload. Now, look, I don't think anything specific will come out of this. It's not like, I don't think that Sarah Palin thinks, I want them to actually reload a gun, see this is a literal gun site, and go and shoot. Will a majority of the people who support her think that? Of course not. But what she has to be careful of and cognizant of is that among her supporters, there might be a couple who see this as literal and not an analogy for a political fight. I mean, in the midst of all this violence against the Democratic congressman, wouldn't this be a terrible time to put the gun sights and the reloading, et cetera, analogies? So that's the kind of thing that makes you think, well, do they want it? You know, is it Is it all an accident, or do they snicker as they put it up, like I say all the time, in the end, they'll say no one could have seen it coming. What, I put a gun sight on the guy's head, or on his district, or in his office. Well, how could I have guessed that they would do exactly like I told them, reload, aim at him, and then fight him through the gun sights I provided? Who could have seen that coming? Sarah, you got to see that coming. This is totally irresponsible. I'd say bounds the reason, but it doesn't look like they operate in that realm. All right, Young Turks. All right, what are the Young Turks? Great hour ahead. I'm your host, Cenk. JR's producing, of course. I believe Jesus is back there directing. All right, listen, major foreign policy news for you tonight. Just came in, two major stories. One came in a little earlier, actually. Bad news out of South Korea. One of their larger ships has sunk, and it was close to North Korean waters, and so people were in a bit of a panic. North Korea had just said that they were going to do unpredictable strikes. But on the other hand, they always say that, right? I mean, they're literally a loose cannon. Now, people were wondering if that loose cannon went off, and there have been 58 people rescued from that ship, but as many as 40 crew members are missing. And so emergency cabinet meetings are being conducted in South Korea. They got to find out why the ship went down. Now, having said that, for the moment being, it doesn't look like a North Korean attack. Very little information on it, but some are speculating that it's rocky waters. They might have run into, it might have been an accident. They might have run into some rocks, or there might have been an internal explosion on the ship. So very little information out of there. Let's hope it wasn't North Korea, because that obviously could lead to disastrous results. Now, obviously, if you don't know this, North Korea and South Korea have had skirmishes in that body of water before that has not escalated. So it doesn't have to be catastrophic. But whenever something like this happens, of course, people start to get very, very worried. So that's foreign policy major news number one. But the one that's really breaking right now, and that's even more major, is it appears okay, no, we don't have a new pope. Everybody calm down. But we do, it looks like, for the moment being, we are going to have a new prime minister in Iraq. It looks like Maliki has lost the elections. Right now, it looks like, of all people, Ayad Alawi is back. Remember, he was actually in charge of Iraq for a brief period of time before Maliki. And it looked like he was done. He was toast for a long time. But he came back. He put together a very interesting coalition. And the reason I'm excited by this is because, you know, look, nothing in Iraq is going to be anywhere near perfect. But his coalition is a pretty good one. It's one, secular. Two, it brings in the Sunnis, which is Iraq desperately needs for stability, peace, etc. Because Maliki's government was largely Shiite and ignored the Sunnis, which then led the Sunnis to do bombings and for things to get much more unstable, much more violence. So Maliki, Alawi winning seems to be a very good sign in that direction. Sunnis celebrating all over Baghdad and other parts of Iraq right now. Even though Alawi is a Shiite, they view Alawi as one of their own in the Sunni circles. So that's the second reason why it's good. The third reason is he ran on an anti-Iran platform. So Maliki was more closely aligned with Iran. Alawi was not. And he said, we are not going to be beholden to the government of Iran. So if it's true that he has really won, it looks like he has 91 seats, and Maliki has 89 seats right now, or their parties do, then this is great news for U.S. interests, because we don't want Iraq in closer alignment with certainly the current Iranian government, which is a fraud of a government that did not win their elections and is fundamentalist and is deeply corrupt. And we want the Sunnis involved in the Iraqi government, and we want a secular government. So, I mean, it looks great for now. Now, it's not over, though. The way that that system works, they've got to form a coalition. And obviously, if you're the leading party, you can form the coalition easier. Maliki is, I don't know, somewhat an offensive analogy, crying like a stuck pig. And he's saying, oh, no, I was fraud. I don't believe it. I'm challenging elections. And, apparently wild gesturing. And, if the reports can be trusted, and seems to be rather irate about this. And he says he doesn't believe the election results. Who knows, right? And even if the election results are true, Maliki can come back and form a coalition government if he reaches out to the right partners, etc. So it's not over. But for the moment being, even though Alawi is not your ideal guy, I've read stories in the past. Now I'm remembering back. It's nothing I read recently about how Alawi, knew a couple of guys in the CIA. Is that something? I don't know. I don't want to. Would that be defaming the guy? I don't know, right? So, but look, better that than Maliki, in my opinion. So we'll see how it turns out. But it looks like it's a good day in terms of foreign policy. Now, there's stuff going on in Afghanistan that is not that great. We're going to talk about our drone strikes in the next segment. We got a guest coming on about that, whether they're legal or not. But you know what? Now that we're on foreign policy, let me actually continue along those lines. Curious good news out of Afghanistan. Back in October, we'd actually gotten routed in this district nearing Pakistan called Kamdesh in Afghanistan. Now, why the hell would that be good news, right? Uh-oh, are the right-wingers right? Are we America haters? No, of course not. No, what wound up happening is it was a very hard region to control, and we got in some massive firefights. In fact, the minute we got there, we were under constant assault. We shoot away the guy who was the most important figure in that region. Of course, he's a mullah, and we said he was working with the Taliban, etc., which later it turns out, of course, that was not true. And Mullah Sadiq, the tribal elder, basically ran away to Pakistan. So that left the younger actual Taliban to fight us. And what wound up happening, honestly, is we lost. And 8 of our guys were killed, and we barely got out of there. Okay, and we abandoned the post. But here comes the good news, which is curious, right? After we left in October, right, so what is that, about 6 months ago, you know what happened? The Taliban came back in charge, and the local people in that area are like, we don't want to be ruled by you. Who the hell are you? And their original leader, Mullah Sadiq, came back, and he's like, yeah. Now you got me to deal with, right? So the local guys went to war with the Taliban. And then they got so ugly that they then went back to the government and said, all right, let's work together. So do you understand the lesson there? It's exactly what Matt Ho talked about on our program earlier. He's the former diplomat, U.S. diplomat, that resigned right before Obama decided to do an escalation in Afghanistan. He said, look, us being there is counterproductive. A lot of these people are fighting us because we're fighting them. And he referred to what he called as valleyism, where if all they want to do is protect their own valley. And he said, if you leave the valley, then they're going to be, instead of fighting with us, they're going to be fighting with the Taliban. When you read the story out of the Wall Street Journal, it is exactly what Matt Ho predicted. Exactly. So now we got partners there that we can work with because we don't have troops in the area. I mean, if there's a lesson to be learned there, the lesson is not escalation. It is, in that case, smart, productive withdrawal. Because if we're not there, they're not going to fight us. All right, so I'll take my good news where I can find it. Now, on the other hand, we also have very bad news coming out of Afghanistan. Jesus, can you grab the picture we were going to run earlier in the week of the woman who got her nose cut off? Okay. Now, this is a very, very sad story. 19-year-old Bibi Aisha of Afghanistan was married off to some Taliban fighter, and she didn't want to be married to him. She didn't agree to that. This was a while back now. And they shipped her off to be with his family. He was out fighting in Pakistan. Then he comes back, and she decides that she's going to run away because she never agreed to this, and it was to settle basically a debt that her dad had. By the way, I mean, stay classy, San Diego. Stay classy, Kandahar. You run into some debt, so you sell your daughter to the Taliban. Great move there. So since she ran away, eventually 2 women said they were going to help her. Instead, they tricked her, and they delivered her back into the hands of her new so-called family. And guess what they decided to do to her? They cut off her nose and her ears. And be careful here. We're going to show you the picture if you're watching online. It's gruesome. And here is 19-year-old Bibi Aisha. Now, look, that's why when people say, let's fight the Taliban, my inclination is, hell yes, let's fight the Taliban. I mean, these are sick sons of... You know what they said, why they cut her nose and ears off? And the bottom of her ears there, they cut the top of the ear off, and you can obviously see if you're watching online again how they cut her nose off, because she had shamed them. It appears to me that that's the real shame here is not what she did, obviously. It's what you sick animals are doing. Now, the thing is, when I see stuff like that, it makes me want to go and kill every one of the Taliban that there is in Afghanistan, Pakistan, etc. It's a natural, visceral human reaction. But we got to be smart. The natural reaction we have is not necessarily the smart one. As we showed you in the previous story, sometimes when we withdraw from certain areas of Afghanistan, the Taliban don't get stronger, they get weaker because they fight with the local tribal leaders in that valley, and eventually they get displaced. Now, that doesn't mean the only answer is withdrawal, because I don't want to leave these guys in charge. Now, and some will say it's not our battle, and that's a fair point too. But for my purposes, what I would love to do is have a smart strategy that isn't just, escalate, more troops, if that doesn't work, or, complete withdrawal, if that, and even if that works in some parts, maybe it doesn't work in other parts. I want to have a strategy that pulls in the local tribal leaders, et cetera, so that we can rout the Taliban together with them. The best that we can as we eventually obviously withdraw from Afghanistan. We can't stay there forever. But God, do I want to protect the people like Bibi Aisha. And so when I see, in this case, what Muslim fundamentalists have done to her, and there are fundamentalists from every religion who are wackos. There's the ones in Uganda and Nigeria that are chasing witches and killing them, killing kids and women, etc., and on it goes. But when I see that kind of fundamentalism, I think that's exactly what we have to fight. But we have to be smart while we're strong in fighting that. All right, so obviously we wish her the best of luck, and now she's being helped by some organizations, including the Women for Afghan Women and other groups trying to obviously get her out of that situation, which they have, and find a better life for her. And she's apparently, according to reports, incredibly upbeat given the situation, has a radiant smile and is looking to tackle the world. And, God bless her heart, So let's do the best we can there. One more story in Afghanistan. And then later in the hour, we will do a perfect example of Republicans, and a story coming out of Tennessee about what they think should happen with people who don't have jobs. The next story in Afghanistan is also unfortunate. Jerome Starkey, reporting for Times of London, unearthed a story about how two women were bound up, according to U.S. officials, and murdered by the Taliban. And there was a lot of press releases about how, you see, these are the guys we have to fight. It's ridiculous. It's terrible. It's hideous. And this is what they do to women. The problem is Jerome Starkey found out, in fact, it was not the Taliban that killed them. It was NATO forces. And they were not bound, as the original report said, the official report said. And according to dozens of witnesses in the area, they were killed, we presume accidentally, by NATO forces and then left in that building. So, his article, which is fantastic, is not so good necessarily because, it exposes what NATO did wrong. Obviously what they did is wrong, and certainly the cover-up of it is terrible, et cetera. But I think the deeper issue here is what he points out, which is, look, almost all the reporters are embedded. As long as they're embedded, they're only going to get the official news story. And they're told that it's so dangerous they can't actually go out and talk to the Afghan population. They can't talk to the citizens, the civilians. They can't talk to other sources. So as long as they're buried within the either the U.S. military or the NATO forces overall, or British forces, they're never going to get the real story. And as soon as Starkey went and actually, he got kicked out at some point because they're like, wait, this guy's questionable. He's questioning the official story. So they denied him access. You see how they try to intimidate people, right? And that's how this game is played. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because then he went on his own and started actually talking to Afghan civilians, and in this case, unearthed this controversy. And he says, look, we have to be more skeptical. Just because our governments or our militaries say something is the case, of course it doesn't just make it the case. You have to do reporting. A lot of times, of course, they're telling the truth, but a lot of times they're covering up mistakes that they made. So be careful of the news you're getting from embedded reporters. They don't have other sources. And a lot of times, as Starkey points out, their lives are dependent on the very soldiers they're covering. So if the soldier is protecting your life, are you really going to write a bad story about them? So the media system in these war zones is obviously broken. And, you know, I can't praise Jerome Starkey enough for putting his own life on the line to go out to do real reporting there. And, of course, his reward for that is that the military has now banned him, okay, and they say, oh, he's won't get any access to them whatsoever, certainly won't get their protection. That's hardball, but it gives you a good perspective on what to trust and what not to trust out of the stories coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq. All right, let's hope, by the way, NATO, of course, on the substance of this story, finds out what actually happened to those women and we find out the truth. That's great reporting by Jerome Starkey. Now, when we come back, are we doing the right thing by doing drone strikes that kill sometimes innocent civilians as well? Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. We just got, about 15 minutes left in the week in terms of politics and news associated with that. So let's make it good, okay? I got a great story coming up for you next on a very typical Republican in Tennessee. But I want to start with Karl Rove. Karl was being interviewed by John King on CNN, and he told a curious story about how Dick Cheney was selected as VP and how he objected. Let's watch that, and then I got something out of it that was interesting. Clip number 5.
You call a meeting with then Governor Bush back in the 2000 campaign because you think he's leaning one way to pick a vice presidential nominee, and you want to make your argument against that choice, and you have a mystery guest in the room. Tell me the story.
Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't he was leaning. He was set on Cheney for vice president, and I thought it was a bad idea. And at this point, there are only about 6 people who know that he's tilted, that he's about ready to do this. And so he calls me up and says, "Come make the case against Cheney." And we're sitting in the Austin Library in the Texas Governor's Mansion, and for about 30 or 35 minutes, I lay out the reasons why he shouldn't pick Dick Cheney, with about 8 reasons, starting with we didn't need to worry about the Wyoming's 3 electoral votes and Cheney's voting record and Cheney's health and the fact he'd been 41 Secretary of Defense and we were trying to develop a separate image for 43. He was a Texas oilman like Bush was a Texas oilman. And, you could caricature them both that way. And so I went through my 8 objections, took about 30 or 35 minutes. The governor of Texas prodded and poked at me and disagreed and argued and made me defend my position. And after about 30 or 35 minutes, he said, "You got anything else?" I said, "No, that's about it." And he turned to the guy next to him and said, "Dick, you got any questions for Karl?" And it was an interesting insight into 2 things. One is he called me the next day and said, "You were right on the politics of it. Go solve the politics." But he said, "That's what I'm not concerned about the politics of it. I've got to answer the question of who would be a good partner for me, and if something terrible were to happen to me, who would be a good president to step in my place? Who would have the confidence of the people?" He was focused on a governing decision. I was focused on politics. He said, "You go take care of the politics. I'm going to be focused on a presidential decision." And it really was his first presidential decision long before getting elected and being sworn in.
That may be the one argument in your lifetime that the left wishes you had won.
And Cheney and I became great friends, but at the moment I thought, great, I've angered the guy who's going to be the next vice president. He goes around heavily armed. I mean,
We're such buddies with Karl Rove. Anyway, I'm going to try to get beyond that. Look, a lot of that story is obviously very self-serving. Isn't George Bush such a good guy for not choosing based on the politics, but based on policy reasons, right? Yeah, I got it, right? But the interesting thing I got out of this is, look at how smart Dick Cheney is. By the time Rove came in, and Rove is the campaign manager, remember Cheney was the head of the Vice Presidential Selection Committee for George Bush. And he convinced the idiot to pick him. He's like, well, I looked for all the possible VPs in the country, and I got to be honest with you, I'm your best choice. And Bush is like, okay, that makes sense. And you know how Cheney did it. It's classic, psychological tricks where he's like, it definitely shouldn't be me. And Bush is like, should it be him? Okay. So, but in this story, we find out new angles to that. One, Rove didn't even get to make the argument against Cheney until Bush had already basically made up his mind. And when Rove goes to make the case against Cheney, Cheney's in the room. Oh, man, he played Bush like a fiddle. There was never... And then there was a part of this story, which you didn't see in the tape there, about, Cheney didn't want the job. He claimed that, Cheney knew that it's... taking the job is like, not worth, in Rove's words, not worth a bucket of warm piss. Right. Unless you have a moron as president, you could just totally gain power and become president yourself for at least 6 out of the 8 years. So, man, Cheney was masterful in how he got to run the country. And even Rove was a bystander and couldn't affect that decision. So now you know how that went down. So that was interesting. Now, we go to a classic Republican story. Now, what's happening is they're having a debate down in Tennessee about what should happen to unemployment insurance once the federal stimulus money runs out. And a Republican's going to come on, as you're about to see here, and make the argument that once that runs out, that's it, we should kick people off of unemployment benefits, etc. And they're going to have a little debate about this back and forth. And I think it's so perfectly symbolic of the difference between Republicans and Democrats in the country that we thought we'd share it with you. It's clip number 6.
And the amendment that's in the packet, Mr. Chairman, makes the bill, but in essence the amendment says that after the funds run out that we received from the American Recovery Reinvestment Act relating to payments to dependents, when that expires, we will not use state dollars to continue that.
Is there a motion on the amendment? There's a motion, second. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Jones, you're recognized.
How do you suggest people eat?
Well, I think we all need to, best you can, find you a job, so I suggest.
Well, but I can tell you, and that's real funny. But,
I don't mean for it to be funny. I really.
Well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the peanut gallery.
All right.
If there are no jobs available, and I can tell you from the people that are getting calls at the Department of Labor that they are looking for employment and jobs aren't there, and they need what tiny little bit of money this is to get through and to feed their children, and that's specifically what you're cutting out, is feeding children.
Well, what I'm cutting out is that when the money runs out, we don't take it out of your back pocket. You're working, you're trying to do the best you can, and you're trying to provide for your family, so we don't take it from your family and give it to those that don't have. So we're taking from those who don't have to and are struggling, like you and your family. And this says that when we're out of money, we're out of money.
So we don't need to assist people to take care of their children and feed them.
Oh, individually you should.
Well,
but by the force of government, you should not. But individually you should. Yes, you should, as I know you do.
No, Representative. The point here is the economy, and you and I both know this, is in dire straits. We know that.
Yes.
People cannot find jobs. No, they can't. No, they can't.
Listen, I mean, we could argue that night and day, but the point is, you want the strong arm of the government to reach into your back pocket and somebody else.
Excuse me. People cannot find jobs, and that can be determined by what's going on at the Department of Labor right now with people that need these benefits. And I think it is just mean to try to cut that money off so that people can't feed their children.
All right. Look, the funny thing is, I see both sides here. And so I'm not going ballistic. Look, his best argument is if you're out of money, you're out of money. I'm very open to that argument, right? But it's the way he makes that argument that's so grating. Because at one point, they asked him, so, you know, how are people supposed to eat? He says, find a job. I guess that's easy for you to say. I mean, the problem is not, hey, look, we're out of money. What do we do? Do we choose to help people that are in dire straits, or do we spend the money elsewhere? It's, they don't need the help. They should just go find a job. As if they're not really trying. All the people who are unemployed are bums. Now, if it was just that one statement, you say, well, okay, that sounded harsh. But then when she came back and said, you know, it's not that people, she said people can't find a job. It's not that they're not looking. He said, we can argue that all day long. See, he doesn't think that you're trying. He thinks that if you're unemployed, you're a bum and you're not really looking for a job and you're taking money, as he said, out of his back pocket. And he says, oh, no, privately you should help them. Really, how much are you helping them? How much are all you, the conservatives helping them, the Republicans helping them? Some are, no question. A lot of people do charity. And is it enough? That's another question. But look, what the government is a collection of all of us getting together for mutual needs. So we need roads. So we get together and we chip in a little bit of money and we get roads. We need a fire department, police department. And sometimes when somebody's out of a job because the recession is what they're calling the Great Recession, and they're desperately looking for work, and they got a family of 4, and they need to eat, we step in and we help them out. Now, the Republican idea apparently is, what's the big deal? Just go get a job. I already have one. And my position isn't, hey, you know what, since they need it, we're going to give it to them indefinitely, et cetera. Look, there are budgetary limits, right? But we have to be sane and humane, and we have to do the best we can in providing for those people in a way that we can afford, that we can make it work, etc. And the callous attitude of the Republicans is what makes a lot of people in the country say, I'm not with those guys. Yeah, we might have budget problems in Tennessee or in the country or whatever, but I want to try to resolve those in the best way to serve as many Americans as possible. I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, who cares? Whatever, buddy. I'm not them. If they're having problems, those bums should go get a job. That's unfortunately what the Republican Party has devolved to and why so many people have left it. So now, on the national level, we have the same thing playing out. Now, Coburn stepped in to play the bunning role. And Coburn came in this morning and said, oh, yeah, we should extend unemployment, $10 billion. You're like, oh, okay, good. Use stimulus money for it. No, you can't. The stimulus money is already assigned to other things. You can't just take it out of the stimulus money. So the Democrats vote no, and now they're about to adjourn for 2 weeks, and the Republicans won't let them vote. They tried 2-3 different times to vote on the Democratic version, and it keeps getting blocked. So now same thing's going to happen. They're going to go away for 2 weeks, and the unemployment benefits are not going to go to some Americans that need them. They're going to have to come back and retroactively fix it again. And it's going to get fixed, but Republicans, what are you accomplishing? You know it's going to get fixed. The only people you're screwing are those people who don't get those checks on those days because you thought you'd be cute. And it looks like this is kind of payback for health care, but who are you paying back? I mean, what, you got Harry Reid. No, you didn't. You got that guy in Tennessee or Wyoming or California or Alaska who's got a family of 3 or 4 or 5, and he's trying his damnedest to find a job, and he can't find one, and you just took his check away. I hope you think you're clever, but it doesn't look cute to us. And then finally, real quick, an update on the David Frum story from yesterday. That's the conservative that got fired from the conservative think tank, American Enterprise Institute. The reason he got fired, we find out today, the major donors were not happy with him contradicting the Republican Party and the right-wing media, especially when he said, it looks like we're all working for Fox now. That's when the major donors came in and said, I don't think David Frum's working here anymore. And when AEI was asked about it, they said, no. It's not that we fired him. There was a dispute over salary. We wanted him to work for $0, and he didn't want to work for that. Well, that about tells you all there is to know about that. Young Turks.